Balasana or child's pose is a resting pose. It's also really good to stretch the spine, and if you take the arms out in front, it can be a nice shoulder stretch. So if you're doing a yoga class and you feel like you need to take a rest, please don't hesitate to come into child's pose. Listen to your body and let it rest when you feel like you need to take a rest. So start off in hero's pose. And then we're just going to lower the torso down over the thighs. If you have knee problems, you may need to pop a block or a bolster or a rolled up towel in between your heels and buttocks. So we're trying to work our buttocks down to the heels. Most people probably can't get them all the way down onto the heels, so they will need a little bit of support there. And especially if you have knee joint problems, you will need something a bit thicker. So that's where a bolster is great to have for your home practice. So just letting the whole body melt down towards the floor. It's actually a good way to start a yoga practice. It stretches out the hips and the spine and just lets the body soften. Your hands can be down beside you with the palms facing up, or if you want to add a shoulder stretch, you can take the arms out in front of you, palms facing down. To stretch the front of the shoulders, you can bring the hands behind your back and interlace the fingers. And lift the arms up behind your back. Keep the shoulders away from your ears. And there are a few different variations you can practice with Balasana. Moving into Pigeon pose, which is a great hip opener. It stretches out that piriformis muscle in the glutes and releases the hip. So it's good to start in Balasana. This will get your alignment correct for downward facing dog. So if you stretch those arms forward, then lift onto the hands and knees, curl the toes under, hips move up towards the ceiling, and we're in downward facing dog. So to come into Pigeon pose, it's easier to come into the pose from downward dog. Easier to swing that leg through. So we're going to swing the right knee behind the right wrist. Now, Kalindi lifted the leg into a three-legged dog to begin with. Not everyone can do that, so that is not a necessity. But if you have the energy, you can do that. And we're going to slide that, come onto the top of the back foot, slide it back slightly. You don't want to slide it back too far. I notice with a lot of people in my classes, they slide it back way too far, and then it puts the hips out of alignment. You want the hips to be in line with each other. So check your hips. Now a couple of different variations. If this is too challenging for you, you may want to bring that heel underneath the thigh. So that is an easier variation. If you tighten the hips, this may be as far as you need to go to begin with. Otherwise, take that foot out. Now, if you're not getting enough stretch, that foot might not be far enough out towards the front. Don't reef the foot, it's bad for your knee, but if you can comfortably bring that foot out a little further towards the front, you'll get a stronger stretch. And make sure you've got all of those back toes on the floor. And then we're going to lower down. You can come to your forearms. Maybe that's as far as you can come down. You can make fists, one on top of the other, and place your forehead on your fists. You may want to make a pillow out of your forearms. Just lower the forehead to your forearms. Or if you've got the flexibility, you can bring the forehead all the way down to the floor and bring the arms out in front of you. This is called sleeping pigeon. It's quite intense. It can be quite an intense stretch, especially if your hips are tight. It is also very restful. Try to relax as much as you can into the pose so those muscles will soften. If we're holding tension in the body, the muscles can't stretch as well. And breathe, nice deep breaths. Takes a little while to loosen those very strong muscles behind the hip. So you could probably stay in this for 10 to 20 breaths if it's not too uncomfortable for you. To come out of the pose, walk the hands back. Just in front of the knee, make sure the hands are shoulder distance apart. Curl the back toes under and come onto the ball of the foot. And then we're going to lift the hips and step back to down dog. Give those hips a bit of a stretch, those legs a stretch. And then we'll move on to the other side. We're going to swing the left knee behind the left wrist. Sliding the right leg back. Check all those toenails on the back foot are in contact with the floor. Check your hips. And then lower the torso, coming into any of those variations. Now this is a good time just to bring your hand up behind the back of your hips there and check that they're level. A lot of people have a tendency to roll to one side, so one hip is up higher than the other. You're going to lose a lot of the stretch. You want to keep those hips lined up with each other. Taking the breaths that you need to take to soften those muscles. Anywhere from 5 to 20. And then to come out of the pose, walking the hands back. In front of the knee. Curl the back toes under. Step to down dog. And give those legs a bit of a stretch.